All right, let's get started. I'm going to imagine that the room's full on YouTube. Everybody's watching on YouTube. My name's Cory Goode. This is this is FERPA 101. For anybody that was at This is Hacking Horizons, a journey into hacking and digital fortification. That is most certainly a ChatGPT title. I was like, we need something a little more pizzazz, and so they delivered on that one. My name's Cory Goode. Been at Barron County Schools for about 20 years. I'm now the network admin, which basically means I still do all the same things I used to do, just in less frequency. And when the great team that we have run into something they don't know how to do or they can't figure out, then they call me and they're like, you got to figure that out because we've all tried and it's broke. But no, without the team we've got, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do, wouldn't be able to dig into. So I always want to give them props. Anyways, enough about me. What is hacking? Everybody pretty much knows what hacking is. According to ChatGPT, there's the definition. I had to get it to shrink it because it kept wanting to be very, very wordy. But basically, it's making something do something that either it wasn't designed to do or do it in a way that it wasn't designed or intended to do. And you've all heard life hacks or, this hack and that hack, that kind of became a buzzword a few years ago. But with computers, it's been around probably since the beginning. So what are some of the tools a hacker uses? Everybody probably, if you've ever done anything with any kind of security, you probably know what that logo is. It's Kali Linux. What is Kali Linux? Well, Kali Linux has a bunch of preloaded tools to make hacking just easy mode. The biggest one is Metasploit framework, and that is basically a framework, a set of tools that are kind of configured and deployed together to allow you to develop and test payloads. It has command and control type stuff, handlers and stagers where you can, you can test a box, you can deploy an exploit, and then have that box communicate back to one of the tools that's in the Metasploit framework so that you can control it, send it commands, pull data off of it. It has a lot of integration and extensibility. You can get the source code for a lot of the tools and edit them, tweak them, whatever, if you're that deep into programming. Nmap's one that a lot of network admins use. It's a port scanner, vulnerability scanner. It's got a lot of scripts that come with the product. It's free and open source, but it comes preloaded on Kali distros. John the Ripper is a password cracker. You can feed it a hash of a password that you've acquired somehow, and it'll sit there and churn away. It has all different options for different methods. You can have a dictionary file. You can have it just sit there and brute force trying to match it. It's greatly dependent upon the computing power that you have of how quickly it does this. And then Aircrack NG, and that's probably one that I don't know how long it's been around, but I know it's a while, and it's probably one that's more prevalent now. And a lot of you may have deployed wireless networks that have multiple pre-shared keys. The benefit of the multiple pre-shared keys is Aircrack, basically with certain wireless cards, you can sit there and listen, and when somebody authenticates to the network, they hand an encrypted version of their password off to the network, and it's sent in the air that anybody listening can capture it. But because it's encrypted, you can't just turn around and reuse that. Well, Aircrack lets you capture that and try to break it. And because of some of the limitations of wireless security methods, a lot of people don't have a real long, lengthy password, so it doesn't take that long to bust them. Whereas if you have the multiple pre-shared keys, and I capture Jacob's password, then I can only use Jacob's password. If Kaylee's password is different, then when Jacob changes his wireless password, now I'm back to square one. I've got to go back and start from zero. Is it foolproof? Not at all, but it does raise the bar, and that's what I'm mainly talking about today. One of the other sessions that was talking about hacking and stuff, they talked about Shodan, and when I saw his slide, I was like, oh, yeah, that's in my slide deck. Shodan is a great tool if you're trying to either hack or pen test or verify that your network is secure. And it's basically an aggregation of data from across the internet of these are publicly facing addresses, domain names. This is this type of server, this type of device. It has these ports open, these services running. but it's not free. The base license is $50, and you get some filterability where you can search and look for like specific ranges, specific addresses, specific ports, and different things. Those features go up with the higher tiers of pricing. Yeah, we got it. Network discovery, threat intelligence. It also is a great tool because you can just kind of browse the data. You can't filter it that well without paying anything, but it's a great tool to just kind of look and see what different services, what different objects on the internet look like to somebody who has no prior knowledge of what is in your network, what is available or public facing. Google, and that's one that I added that I've done before. I've used it before, but I just kind of forgot about it. And when I was in the hacker session yesterday, he mentioned it, and so I was like, I need to throw that in there and talk about that. Google's a great tool for passive recon. And passive recon, if you're not familiar with that term as far as hacking or anything, passive recon is you're doing reconnaissance on a target that they have no way whatsoever to detect. You know, if you're port scanning an IP range, then they may not notice it, but they have logs somewhere that they could potentially see, like, hey, you know, this IP scanned all of the available ports against us and all of our IPs. We should probably pay attention to that. But Google, you know, any search on Google, you're not going to have visibility of that. So how does Google help you hack? It's all about the advanced operators. You can go to Google and search for the hacking database or Google hacking database, and there are thousands of predefined search terms that if there's IP cameras on the internet or student information systems or temperature monitoring or HVAC control, SCADA systems, different things like that, they all have unique things that show up when the URL, the data is processed that Google can filter out so you can target specific things. I've used it before. You can look up some of the IP cameras, and there's overseas and in universities and all different places, there's IP cameras that are publicly available. Some of them with PTZ and the controls are not locked. You can sit there and spin the camera and zoom in on stuff. Been there, done that. You know, the other thing that, and probably the most useful thing to an ed tech operator is going to be scanning your own district website, putting in it's a site colon filter or operator that you can then specify down to your district domain and see what does Google know about you that maybe you don't have linked on your website you thought was gone, but it's still sitting on a web server publicly accessible, and Google's got it in its URL list. A good one to add to that is your site restriction and then password or social security number or any other PII or any kind of sensitive information. And you'd be surprised how many things you'll find. You're like, I didn't know that was available because you don't have it linked on your website. You think, well, nobody can find it. Well, Google's pretty good at crawling the internet. They've been doing it for a minute or two. They're kind of like State Farm. They know a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two. Let's see. Yeah. So what else are hacker tools? Now we're getting into the physical side of things. These are some of the things that actually do kind of scare me. You've probably heard of rubber ducky. How many have heard of USB rubber ducky? Fair percentage. How many have heard of OMG cable? So about a third of the ones that heard of the rubber ducky. So the OMG cable is basically a computer in a USB cable. And it looks like any other charger cable you've ever seen. Looks like 99% of the cables out there, but it can deliver payloads, perform keyloggers, all sorts of different little nasty things. Now they're not free. They're about $200, somewhere around $200 for depending on what kit you get that comes with different things. The rubber ducky is a similar thing that you can do it has a little more memory, I'm pretty sure, but it's a flash drive. It looks like an innocent flash drive. And it comes in a case that looks like any other flash drive. You go to Amazon and pay $5 for. It's one of those things. If you're walking down the street and you see a flash drive, don't pick it up and plug it into your computer, especially if you have a sensitive job. I can totally see somebody trying to get into a sensitive network, either a bank or some sort of financial institution, and just going around wherever the coffee shops and places that those people frequent and just dropping flash drives out because somebody with some level of access is going to pick it up and plug it in if you don't have USB disabled and all those other things that you can do to kind of prevent that. They're also really good tools for, public facing computers. My wife is a pharmacist, and one of the first places she worked, they had a checkout register that was right up on the edge of the, I'll break my connection now. It was right up on the edge of the thing. And I asked her, I said, I wonder what happens if I plug in a keylogger into that USB port, that you could literally be sitting here paying for your stuff and plug it in and not have to go out of your way. There's no way that they're going to notice that if you're sly enough about it. It's like, so what's going to happen? What sensitive information am I going to capture with a keylogger? Social security numbers, insurance billing information, credit card numbers, all kinds of different stuff that you could get. Let's see, I got ahead of myself there. Scriptable payloads, cross-platform. These tools, these two right here, Android, iPhone, doesn't matter. If there's a vulnerability, then it can probably be loaded onto these to be exploited. Mac and Windows, they're just integrating at the hardware level. The USB rubber ducky, basically, most of the payloads, it looks like a keyboard to the device. And so they just think somebody's typing on the keyboard. This one, how many people have heard of the Flipper Zero? Yeah. So everybody get ready, your iPhones are fixing to die now. No, we're not going to do that. But we did have a student bring one of these into one of our buildings from another district, because we have an ATC, and he ran an exploit off of that device that locked up about 70 of the phones of student, staff, whatever, within about a 30, 40-foot radius of him. And they had to be powered off and powered back on, and anything with a Bluetooth connection was basically locked up. So it got so bad that the FBI got involved. That gentleman is no longer allowed in our buildings. So what can you do? Why is this such a nasty tool? And the big thing I always say is this is the mascot for these little hacker tools, because this one is so easy to get. It's fairly cheap. It's about $200, depending on which kit you buy. You can get a case for it. You can get some other add-ons and stuff. It's great for RFID cloning, keyless entry hacking. It has frequency scanners on here. So a lot of your older cars that have the fobs, they figured out after a little while that the way that they were doing that wasn't secure, because those older ones, you could sit here with something like this and say, all right, scan. And then you walk up and unlock your car, it transmits a signal of a certain frequency, certain code, certain bits. This would capture it, be able to save it, and then replay it. So then when you go back inside, and I can come up and go click and unlock your car. Now they use different systems, a lot of the newer cars, and they've changed it for a while now. A lot of them aren't. I tried it with my own cars, and it wouldn't pick them up. It could see that there was a signal, but it couldn't grab it. And most of them, the easiest one they use, and it's not foolproof, but they use a rolling code. So the manufacturer preloads all these codes, and every time one's used, it's burned. And your fob has a chip in it, and it knows the algorithm, and it generates a new code every time that's on the list. So if you capture that code, it doesn't mean you can replay it. You'd have to get one that wasn't used to be able to replay it and get into a car. Again, there's still ways you could do it, but it's not as easy as it used to be of just the same code every time. There's modules for these. There's GPIO pins, so you can add on extra devices. That are Wi-Fi module you can add on. There's a module you can add on. I'm going to do a demonstration here in just a second. Hopefully it doesn't fall on its face, where you can credential clone. So you can clone RFID access badges, and you just hold it up there and read it, and then you can replay it with this. So let's do that now, and then we'll move on. So right here's my little USB reader. All right, so smart card ID. So if I use this smart card and I put it on this reader, you can see that it reads the number. We're going to say that it's this number right here. I don't think that's the actual number it transmits, but we're going to say that's it. Okay. Now I've already cloned it, but I'm going to do it again with my flipper here. I'm just going to go down and say, read a card. It says, got it. So now I'm going to go to save and save it. Now I can replay it anytime I want. So now you can see that doesn't say, it says NA. So now I'm going to say emulate. Set my flipper down there, and there's the same number. So if I went up to a door that card had access to, then I could just sit there and go I'd be in the building. Now, you know, at the same time, we use, and I didn't bring it, we use a different credentialing technology that's still not foolproof, but out of the box, the radio in this won't read it. Now, there's add-ons that you can get where you can read it, and there's another piece you have to buy to be able to decode the number. So it's still not unhackable, but it's just another level up that you got to go to be able to get it. And that's kind of my theme today is raise the bar, always push forward. Let's move on. How are we doing on time? I'm going to be done in 30 minutes. Nah. All right. So what can we do? Scan your networks from the outside and the inside. You know, inside is not quite as big a deal as the outside, but there's still things inside your network that either an enterprising teenager might find, a virus, some sort of worm might find, ransomware, or God forbid you get hacked all the way through. You know, thankfully from the outside, unless we open up the holes, you know, our security team does a pretty good job. So how do I scan from the outside? CISA. And I know you've probably heard that. We signed up, had them do a scan on us, and that's a copy of one of our reports. For free, for educational institutions, they'll scan your network. Whatever IP ranges you give them, they'll scan you and give you a vulnerability report, tell you, you know, those are the things you need to be worried about. You probably need to do something about that. And we had some things. We you know, nobody's perfect, and we weren't either. We had one that was an easy low fruit. We had a box that had remote management open to the WAN, to the internet. Now, granted, it was on a encrypted, you know, an SSL web page login, but had a password. But somebody could sit there and bang away trying to get into it. It's not something that we intended to have on, but it's just something we didn't know was out there. Gives you an executive summary. Gives you. I just grabbed a couple snapshots. It gives you a long list of knowledge and information about what it found, and they will continue to scan you, so you can work to remove those things, and they'll scan you and send you another report. And you can be like, how did we do? Did we get some of that cleaned up? You know, our first one, those two columns that say 9, they said 11. And so we cleaned up a couple things and got them out of there. Another thing you can do is audit. Audits everybody hates auditors, but they do serve a purpose. And in the technology world, you can be your own auditor to an extent. We do GPO audits. We'll take and print out or, you know, screenshot what are all the policies that are applied to all of our domain. And then Steve will go through the list and check them off. And me or Jacob or whoever wrote the policy has to be like, well, that policy does X, Y, and Z. And then we'll discuss, do we still need it? What is the implications? What's changed since that was wrote? And there's been some things we went through and we're like, oh, it's not a security issue, but there's no reason for that to be there anymore. Let's take that out. Microsoft, Azure, I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's some service that you can have that will audit your cloud tenant. G Suite, I know Amplified IT will do that. We had them do it. It's not cheap. I'm not going to say it's super expensive, but it's not pocket change, but I think it's worth the money. It's not something I would advise to do every year, probably. I don't think most of us are probably making enough changes to warrant that every year, but I would probably put it on some sort of schedule within your budget cycle and say, you know, every 3 years, 5 years, you know, whatever you're comfortable with and have the ability to do, I would recommend putting that in there. But, and I'll show you a little bit of, well, it's not much, but they give you a big comprehensive report. These are all the settings and the best practices or the things that we recommend. Here's where you're at. Here's some things that you really need to be worried about. And we were in pretty good shape with that audit. One of them that we had was a sandbox feature within email attachments that was turned off. It was apparently something that Google had added that wasn't on by default when they added it, and we had never turned it on. And so I was like, that's an easy one. We're going to turn that on, you know, almost immediately. DNS and firewall. That's one that probably is probably the worst across the district. And then I've heavily redacted this. I did some, and then when I found out and went back and realized that this was being live streamed on YouTube, I added a lot more redaction. But this is a screenshot that the security team can give you. If you put a ticket in, don't expect it immediately because they're far overworked and understaffed. I'm not sure about their pay, but I'm sure they probably need some more for everything they do for us. But they'll give you a report of these are the rules that are on the firewall for your district. And there's things on here that when we looked at it, I was like, I'm clearly most likely the one that requested it. I have no idea why that's there now, and it definitely isn't needed anymore, but it's open to the internet. This port, this IP, all these different things, and it's like that needs to come out. And pretty much as soon as we're off of the lockout for doing the ENA switchover, there's a couple of these that are going to be pulled because they're not doing anything anymore for us. All they are is exposing us to potential risk. I think this is the static NAT list, and there's some of these on here too that also aren't needed. That a public IP address directs you straight to an internal IP of a device that maybe is a different device than what you originally set it up for. And now the new device has things open and vulnerable that you didn't mean to have open to the internet, which is where that Shodan and Google Advanced Operators comes in. And that's where you may find some stuff of your own that you're like, whoa, I didn't know that this camera that's in this place was open to the internet or whatever. It's on a TIN number. How would it be on the internet? Well, if you have an old static NAT entry, it could be. Educate. I mean, that's what the business is all about, education. But you got to educate yourself. And how do you do that? Well, Kisti and YouTube, those are great places. There's all kinds of videos about pen testing and security and hacking on YouTube. You can learn a lot. You can use those powers for good, or you can use those powers for evil. That's up to you and the FBI. I'm not in that one. CISA has a lot of resources on their website. They have tabletop exercises and a lot of things that you can get for free. Just going on their website and perusing. That'll give you some information to kind of raise the bar. Amplified IT, KnowBe4. There's a lot of third-party companies that have services where they can either offer training or different aspects of this that'll help you, either train yourself, your staff, or others who maybe need to help raise your security posture. Security Plus, CompTIA. I mean, that's a pretty easy, basic one that, if you're in the IT field, there's probably a lot of relevant information in that. If you don't have it, I'd recommend looking at it. This is a screenshot from this is the title page of our report. And it too was a tool to learn because there were some things that as we went through it, was like, I didn't know that was buried 15 layers deep in Google settings. And they've called it out because, I mean, that's what they do every day is work on this cloud Google collaborative space. So that's one you can kind of get a twofer there. They also, CDW and Amplify, they also have some free resources. They've got a best practices guide for G Suite, the directory structure and other things like that of how they recommend, and they list out, this is why we think this, and your district may differ, that's fine, but you can look at that as a baseline and then apply that to what your district's needs are and go from there. And again, CISA, the level of information they've given us for $0 is unmatched by anything I've seen in the 20 years I've been here. On that scanning, and I didn't have a picture of it, but the security team will also, if you put a ticket in, and again, it's not going to be immediate. They'll get to you. They'll scan your IP space and give you a Nessus report that says, these are the things that we found, you should be aware of this. You might want to take a look at this immediately. Maybe you've got a old version of SQL server exposed to the internet. So what's the last thing we can do? And that's elevate. 15 character password never expires. Not the best, but it's better than a 5-character password. And this door, I don't know if y'all can see it with me in the way, but if you're going to try and break into that building, well, if you want to go low tech, you can just smash the glass and walk in. There you go, you're in. And then take it up a level. There's another door that still, there's ways in, but it's a little harder. It's not quite as easy. That glass, I don't think you can see it in the picture, but it's got the little the little safety glass or whatever. So you're gonna, have a little harder time getting through that. Let's say that door equates to a password, 15 character password, but it expires every year. So now we've stepped it up a little. We're still not great, but better than nothing. And then the last one, I don't want to try and break through that door. Let's say that's a 15 character password, expires every 90 days and has MFA on it. That's a little bit of increase in complexity and difficulty to the user, but not a great lot. And the exponential increase in security is almost unmatched. The problem with security and technology is, I guess it applies to a lot of things, is you can have it fast, you can have it easy, you can have it cheap, but you only get to pick two. You got to weigh all your security concerns with usability, reliability, and serviceability. It's one of those, the most secure thing that any of us could do for our networks, disconnect from the internet. Don't let anybody log in. Don't let anybody touch a computer. Great, you're secure, but now you have no usability. Why even have it? Just throw it away. Let's go back to pen and paper, So we can't do that. So we've got to find somewhere in the middle that we can, plug in and be online, but not be standing there with the door wide open waiting for somebody to walk in and take all our cookies, all our good stuff. Yeah, I knew I was going to be fast. That one?
Yeah. So okay, so submit feds, and it'll come in. Some of that stuff means something. The only people that get from that is not, they get based. There's not, you don't understand.
Part of this report, at the end of it, there's all these attachments, and it'll give you a CSV file that lists all the vulnerabilities that they found on the scans, and it basically gives you a checklist that you can go through and then work to remediate those. It'll tell you, this IP address, and it gives you even the CVE numbers and all those things, and you can Google those and find out a whole lot of scary information about what's out there.
So Cory said, before we fill out a questionnaire and we ask them to scan us. And Cory had asked me is, well, do we clean up these issues? Because we have a handful of issues we knew about. Do we clean them up before, or do we let them do the scan and then they'll just be part of the report? And I was like, no, you take and you clean them up. You brush your teeth before you go to the dentist. Yeah. So you clean up everything we know. So what they find are real problems, and he was able to, and so the report comes back and there's how many vulnerabilities?
I think there was 11 unique vulnerabilities and 49 total.
Yeah. And of those, how quickly and how easily were they
most of them
minimized?
Most of them are medium severity, and it's where a service or a server is using an older version of TLS, and it's not secure, not as secure as it should be. The biggest one was the weak cipher on some of the SSL certificates, or I think it was medium strength or whatever is what it called it. And again, those are things that maybe don't necessitate or even are possible to be immediately remediated. The expense of going out and saying, all right, all these SSL certs, we're redoing them. You might not be able to do that. And it's one of those, if nobody's got your cert to try and bust it, then it's not that you're exposed, but that if they get it, then it's going to take them less to get in.
So, I mean, we had, uh, I don't think he's got it listed on here because he don't want to be completely pants down, but I'll tell you what it was. So we had a,
On YouTube, don't forget.
yeah, we have a firewall that we maintain in-house that we utilize for phone traffic to come in and go out. Well, one of the vulnerabilities that they actually caught was we had the firewall set so that you could log into it remotely to do management.
Yeah.
So we turned that off, and that removed, I don't know,
Yeah, there's
18
two
of
or
the
three of 'em.
tickets. Yeah.
Took 2 or 3 of them off the list.
Yeah. Took 2 or 3 of those off the list. We had a issue with our payroll our check system. So we do eStub, and there was a checkbox where we removed, where you can't attach to it through you have to use HTTPS to attach to it instead of
Yeah, all of
going
our,
through
all of our
regular
links on
web
that
page.
one were set to HTTPS, but HTTP was still enabled for that web service. So if somebody connected to it and logged in, then they're now transmitting their username and password for their pay stub system in clear text.
Super, super simple.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And so CISA has 2 scans that they'll do for you. They have the cyber hygiene, which is what this is, and then they have a web application vulnerability scan that they'll do. And the web application vulnerability scan goes in and looks for things like you've got eStub that maybe is vulnerable to SQL injection or some other vulnerability, cross-site scripting, and it'll tell you about those things. Now, some of them, like the eStub one, not a lot we can do with some of that because that's in the application itself, other than call them and go, hey, why is this not more secure? We've got social security numbers, we've got payroll information in here. Why is this not secure? And they're going to go, well, because you didn't pay for our upgrade or you didn't pay for the latest version or cloud hosted or whatever. But at least now you know, and you've got some data that you can use to decide, well, maybe we do need to pay for their cloud version or pay for their upgrade or whatever it is. Library automation. How many people have Destiny or some other library software that's exposed to the internet? It's all in the cloud. Nobody's on-prem anymore. Yeah. And if that's one that we're in the nexus of that right now. We're currently on-prem, and that's one that it had some easy low fruit on that one. I think of what else was on that report. We had a web server that used to be used for press releases and stuff. It was just a single directory that they could dump files into that the media could access to pull pictures and things like that. And there was no information there, but that site was still there. And when they scanned it, they lit us up a little bit on that one. So that got turned off and shut down. But the scanning and the auditing, those are the 2 easiest ways to pick the low fruit to say, if nothing else, I have put forth the best effort to secure us so that when the attackers come, they're not going to get in through an open window or an open door.
It goes back. I mean, you do the scans, you do the audits, you do the whatever, and you sleep at night.
Yeah.
Something happens, it happens. Time of determination, any hacker can get into you. The one document that he had pulled up a moment ago with our IP addresses, that was a little jarring. It's been a couple years since we've done that one.
That's one that, we've not had turnover like some districts have had as far as technical staff. Steve's been there for 25, 27 years. I've been there 20 years. These others have been there for several years. We've not had that turnover, and there were things on there that even we were not aware of or had forgotten were on there. So I can't imagine a district where maybe you've had 2 or 3 CIOs, different techs and stuff, and now 5 years, 5 years difference, and there's nobody in the tech department who was there 5 years ago. What kind of things are lurking in the shadows that you don't know about? Sorry, Kenny, but I think your tickets are about to go up.
Talk to them about the countermeasures we do with email.
Huh?
Talk to them about the countermeasures we do with email. When the email goes to
our email, yeah. So one of the things we do, and this is not quite hacking, but it's a common method of compromise, is we have several filters on our email that look for emails with encrypted attachments, emails with anyone in leadership's name in there, but not their Barron County email. And if it's not from an authenticated source, it may be Steve Gum at Gmail, but it says it's Steve Gum, Barron County Schools, CIO or whatever. That's going to be flagged and dumped into a quarantine that Steve or I have to review before we let that email go. We get probably 5 to 10 emails a month of our superintendent requesting a wire transfer to the CFO or one of the payroll people to be initiated out to some, oh, here's an invoice. Can you pay that? And it's very evident that now they're starting to use AI for writing these emails because the amount of grammatical syntax errors in their sentences has gone way down. But it's still, it's not something our super does because a lot of our authorizations are by policy have to be done in person or verbally. And verbally is one that, now you got to be careful about on the phone because there's a lot of AI bots out there that you can take a voice sample and regenerate somebody's voice and make it say whatever you can type into the computer. So that's something that, in the future, it's probably going to be, you're going to have like a blood sample, an iris scan, and a thumbprint to be able to authorize something just to make sure that you are you and not a Tesla robot or something else, walking in here saying, yeah, let's pay that money.
So about once a month or whatever, we'll take a screenshot of those emails that get blocked and send them to the leadership that we blocked. So take note, capture that.
Yeah. Anybody have a question? Go ahead.
Tell them about the extreme VSPs when we did internal scans.
Oh, what? Oh, so we did internal scans using, that was what, Nmap, wasn't it? And discovered that we had failed to turn off Telnet on all of our extreme VSPs that we had just deployed. And that was a little embarrassing. We turned it off on our main cores, but we put what, 10 VSPs out in the district, and they were all sitting there, all pants down with Telnet open and FTP. Yeah. I don't know if you know that, but your VSPs run an FTP server out of the box, or at least they did on whatever version of code ours released on. Yeah. Anybody else? I thought that was y'all. Well, that's all I've got. I'm done. If y'all want to see something, have a question, let me know. The QR code is definitely not malware or anything. It's definitely my slide deck. And if you don't want to scan the QR code, there's the bit.ly link I made last night at about midnight. So if it doesn't work, just email me and I'll get you my slides. Or if you have any other questions later, you can email me and I'll be glad to talk with you and give you anything I know.